Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore storytelling on film as well as interviews with industry professionals who work in film, television, theater, among other areas of the arts. I want to welcome to the show, welcome back to the show first, Anthony Uzarowski, who is the author of Jessica Lange and Adventurer's Heart, as well as a book he has coming out, a celebration of LGBTQ icons, which I have here, Friends of Dorothy, which I'm looking forward to. I'm almost done it. I'm really, really enjoying it. He has written numerous articles on cinema and the arts, with his work appearing in The Guardian, Film International, Gay Times, Queer Tea, and many other publications. You can also see his head pop up in the occasional documentary where he shares his love for classic movies and stars. And my second guest today is Kendra Bean, who is a historian and curator. She is the author of Vivian Leigh, An Intimate Portrait, and runs the popular classic film blog vivandlarry.com. Her writing has also been published by the British Film Institute and Bright Lights Film Journal, and she has lectured on cinema at the National Portrait Gallery in London, the Victoria and Albert Museum, the BFI, and the Walt Disney Family Museum. And today we are discussing their book that they co-wrote together, which I just finished and absolutely loved. Sorry that it's a little blurry on Zoom for you. Oh, I think I kind of got it. Ava, A Life in Movies, which I absolutely love. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks
It's
for
good to be
having
here.
us.
I absolutely love this book. I mean, for one thing, the photos are incredible. All the incredible images that you were able to get in this book, but it's such a great book because it really shows much more of her creative side and her as the artist and her value as an artist, and why her performances have often been overlooked. And you know, because as you both said, she's often was in the press for her marriages and you know the drinking and Frank Sinatra and all that kind of stuff. So it's great that we're getting a different kind of perspective, because I've always loved her, and I've also found that she's her performances have been underrated. So it's really, really good. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you both off the top. I'll start with you, Kendra. When did you just first get interested in Ava, in her
Well,
performance?
um, I think Anthony has spoken about this before on a different podcast, but I came to writing through my interest in Vivian Leigh, actually. And then after I published that book in 2013, I was looking for another project. And Anthony, I knew, had been a big Ava fan. And so I decided to say, hey, would you like to co-write a book about Ava? So for me, I think we started researching and writing in about 2015, and it was published in 2017. And for me, it was really interesting because I didn't know very much about her at all. I'd seen maybe like one or two of her films. And
Oh,
really, it was through Anthony's enthusiasm about her that I was kind of like, okay, yeah, let me check out all these different angles. And I really came to appreciate her,
hmm.
not just her talent, but I think her sort of saltiness as a person because she was really interesting and she didn't take crap from anybody really,
Right.
and that's what I like about her.
What about you, Anthony? I understand your grandfather was a big fan of hers. Is that what got you interested in her when you were younger?
Yes. How did you know that?
My
I probably
research.
said it before in some interview or something.
Yeah, yeah,
No, that's
exactly.
true. It was my grandfather whom I never met because he had died before I was born. So
Ah,
I just heard stories from my mom that Ava was his favorite movie star. So I remember the name Ava Gardner from when I was very young. And I didn't really know what she looked like. I certainly hadn't seen any of her movies, but it just the name itself had that kind of significance for me. And then I remember seeing the Barefoot Contessa on TV when I was young, maybe 12 or something, and just being
mhm.
like, wow, who's that? Because obviously I was aware of people like Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor. Um, but for some reason Ava was always a bit more, I don't know, underrated. So I
Right.
didn't really know what she looked like until I saw that film, and I was kind of blown away. First of all, by her beauty, but also there was something about her sort of charisma and mystery, and I don't know,
Hmm.
I just was really captivated. So from then on, I just started sort of trying to find out more about her and reading whatever I could. And over the years, I just sort of became really a bit of a, expert, you could say. I just sort of researching everything. And then I had that Facebook page as well for a while, which grew and became this huge page, which it's not there
Oh,
anymore, but at the
okay. I was
time it
gonna
was.
say I didn't see that. Okay, so okay, great. Is it gone? It's
Oh
totally
no.
gone.
Yeah,
It's been deleted.
it's another story, but I don't know if you
Okay,
want to get
okay.
into that story, but it grew like it had something like 250,000 followers, so it was like
Oh wow.
really big. And then I don't actually remember how it. I think Facebook, in the end, Facebook actually got involved and somehow took it away from me,
Oh,
which,
okay.
anyway, long story short.
Whole other story.
So
Yeah.
yeah, by the time Kendra and I decided to do the book, it was just, I had been sort of involved with Ava for a number of years. So yeah.
And so you two, I imagine you. How did you both meet? You met in school. Is that where you both met?
No, actually,
No,
we
we
met in
actually
London.
Oh.
Sorry,
did we meet
Kendra,
through
you go on.
Facebook? Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
met through Facebook
Oh,
actually.
really? Okay.
Initially, yeah, through because I had a page about Vivian Lee and Laurence Olivier based like on my website.
Right.
And I think Anthony was in that, and we just got to chatting. And I moved to London in 2010 to do my first grad degree in film studies. And we just kept talking. And then I remember one day walking into a bookshop called Waterstones, which is over by University College London in Bloomsbury. And Anthony worked there.
Ah.
And I was out there browsing. I was actually, funny enough, I was browsing for books, to like film books, to flip through them to see who people mentioned as their agents, because I was looking for an agent for my Vivian Lee book, and that's what I was pursuing at the time. And Anthony was working behind the counter, and he was like, he said, "Are you Kendra?" And I said, "Are you Anthony?" And then, and the rest was history. So then we became good friends.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that we're at a time now where people are becoming good like friends through shared passions. I mean, I don't know about either of you. I don't know a lot of people who know a lot about movies like in like outside of the internet. Like
Yeah.
every now and then I'll
Yeah.
meet someone. I'm like, oh wow, but it's now we have access to these Facebook groups dedicated to Ava Gardner, like the one you started, and so that's how people can bond and find a shared passion. Oh, that's fantastic! I love that story. And so now, was it someone's idea to do the book, or did it just kind of happen organically?
I
Anthony, I
think,
don't really remember.
well,
It's been a while.
Kendra's Vivian book was a success, like I think
Yeah.
it was like well reviewed and people loved it. And I think Kendra's agent at the time was saying, you should think of another
Ah, I
project. And I
see.
think and I guess I mentioned to Kendra, I would love to write. At the time I was still at university, so I hadn't really published anything. And I remember talking to Kendra, I'd love to one day also do a book. And I think that's kind of how it came about. She said, why don't we do book together? And Ava was kind of the obvious choice because I was so into Ava. So I think that's how it happened, sort of organically over a number of conversations. We just came up with that.
And
Sounds
so,
about right.
right,
Yeah.
right, and so I'm curious, because Kendra, you were coming at it, your interest in Ava through Anthony's passion and interest in her. So what makes you say, okay, Ava's going to be my next subject? What was it that you thought was worthwhile going down this road?
Well, I think there were a couple of things. The first is kind of obvious since Anthony had that Facebook page, which had, you know, 250,000 followers. That's a really good from a marketing standpoint as well. And I was really keen to not just be known for as like the Vivian Lee lady. Like I still love
Right.
Vivian Lee, and she's still my, you know, my favorite. And I hope to do more work on her in the future. But it's important for me, like professionally, I think, to break out into other areas and learn about other people and kind of hone my writing style as well. And I have to say that I haven't written anything since Ava, because I do curation and things, and I'm a museum curator by profession now. But it's yeah, it was really important for me, I think, to just do something a little bit different and to learn about a new star. And really, I said, if I want to be a film historian, I think I can't just be the Vivian Lee historian. I have to kind of prove that, you know, I can write about other people and other things as well. So it was a good exercise for me to learn more about her and really to start from scratch. Because when I did my Vivian Lee book, I had already been researching her for years and years and collecting on her for years. And with Ava, I really had to start from the beginning. So it was like from square one, trying to determine, you know, where I was going to do research and watching all of her films, reading all of the previous biographies. And it was really through that she really did capture my attention when I was doing that. It's not just kind of a, you know, oh, I read about her and yeah, we're gonna write, but I don't really care that much. No, I really did appreciate everything that she did.
And now, how did you both co-write a book? How does that process work for the two of you?
Anthony, do you want to?
Yeah, you can take that one, Anthony.
Yeah, sure. We literally just divided the chapters. So we came up with the proposal together, and then we did a sort of chapter breakdown, and it's pretty chronological, so it was kind of, you know, easy to do that. And then we just said, okay, you do half and I'll do half, and then we did spend many hours just sitting together and reading what we had written, and then kind of trying to make sure that it flows kind of smoothly, and that everything was fitting together, and that our styles, in a way, our styles were already not that dissimilar. So I think it works as a whole. You can't really tell that it's kind of disjointed and written by two different. I don't think.
Yeah, no, you can't tell. No.
So, and especially. No, and especially I remember actually we're sitting like in a library, or like I remember we're sitting in the BFI and like reading it, and you know, when we were reading my chapter, Kendra would like say, oh, can you also say this, or can you and change this a little bit, and then when she read her chapter, I would. So we kind of just curated it together after we had done it. So yeah, it was a curious process. Like we had no, like, I don't know, we had no model to follow. We just kind of did it. And it also helped that we were really good friends, and that we kind of had this sort of language, this common language of friendship. So we could say to each other, oh, I don't think this quite works, or what do you think about this? Like in a way that maybe if we didn't know each other very well, would be a bit awkward. But I think we just, you know, we would invite each other for dinner and like have wine and just kind of laugh and work on this. So it was fun, but also it was hard work, but it was fun.
Right. So was there any butting heads, any any conflict, anything erupt, or it sounds like it was pretty like a rich experience for you both.
It was definitely a rich experience from a writing standpoint and from gathering photos, but the process of putting together a book, especially like a coffee table style book, which is what the Ava Gardner book is, it's hard. It's not as easy as people might think. Because in addition to writing the text, it's the gathering of photographs, the clearances of copyright, the negotiating with various estates, the interviews with people who knew our subject. So it took a lot of time, and there were some roadblocks that we both encountered together along the way, and some frustrations that came along with those. But I'm happy to say that we came out of the whole process unscathed and are still really good friends.
Good. Good to hear. Yeah, I was wondering about that, because there are so many photos. And now, what was that was that some of the obstacles of getting clearance on being able to use them?
Yeah, that was part of it. We also initially had some trouble with the Ava Gardner estate. And this happens a lot, I think, when you're writing nonfiction, especially if you're writing about people who, still have relatives that are alive or estates that are really active in trying to protect their legacy. And so, getting through that, we had to get basically lawyers involved through our publisher and everything to make sure we were using previously published texts like her autobiography within the terms of fair use and everything. So
Right.
getting permissions for things wasn't always easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's something that a lot of authors have to deal with, and a lot of them will probably tell you that it's not a smooth journey all the time. And I think people who do have smooth journeys writing biographies about any kind of like 20th century figure, especially one who was famous like Ava, most people run into trouble with that. And anyone who doesn't, I think they're really lucky. I think that's the exception and not the rule.
Right. And who helped the most, would you say? Because I know you met like Tina Sinatra. I mean, I know there was a number of people, but what was did anyone's input, or who you were able to meet who knew her personally, like Tina Sinatra? Was anyone particularly, the most beneficial in terms of putting something that maybe no one else knew in this book? You can take that, Anthony. It's always hard when you got two people. It's like, I gotta just pick.
Well, navigate, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that there was one particular person. Like, when I was talking to you about Jessica, we had the Paco thing
Yes.
that was like a breakthrough for me, her ex-husband.
Right.
I think in terms of Ava, we were just lucky to have those different voices, but I wouldn't say that one was more important than other. I think it was nice that we had a nice kind of cross section of different people from different periods of her life. So like Tina Sinatra remembered her from when Tina was a child, and Ava was kind of with her father. But then we spoke to people who knew her in London during her later years as well, and that was really interesting because that's a very different part of her life.
Right.
And then so I think what was quite difficult for us was to capture Ava's own voice, because she was such an elusive presence and she never really gave that many interviews. She never gave any filmed interviews. So for us, it was really important to find out who she was behind the image, So we tried to look for letters, or when we did meet people, we really asked them to tell us, what was she really like? What was so special about her? So that was the challenge. But I don't think, maybe Kendra, you have a different view, but I don't think there was one particular person who really like was a game changer for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there were a couple people that stand out in interview wise, and one was Tina Sinatra, as you mentioned, and the other was Michael Garrity, who knew Ava in her later years in Ennismore Gardens in London, and he was so warm and lovely, and would invite us up to his flat. He lived, I think he's still with us, I assume. I hope. He was on
I
the
guess
top
Anthony
floor.
would know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He lives on the top floor of this gorgeous apartment building in Knightsbridge, right near, sort of near the V&A and Natural History Museum. And he was so warm, just invited us up to his house and would chat with us. And I remember he used to call me Kendra, which was like really funny to me. I don't know why. Yeah. But it just, people who were so trusting and willing to open up in kind of a big way, and like, really took the time out to speak with us in person or on the phone and share some of those memories, even if some memories maybe weren't like the nicest things, like, Tina, having Ava as a stepmom. Well, Ava's relationship with Frank was always quite turbulent,
Right.
And so talking about that sort of thing can't have been easy. It wasn't all like Tootsie Pops and rainbows in their life, but she was, she was very giving and open. about things and
Mhm.
actually let us use some photos. So
Yes.
that was, you know, that's the kind of thing that you really hope for when you're doing biographical research like this. So I think we were quite lucky in that way.
Was it, someone like her? I mean, was it challenging to get her or anyone who knew her so intimately to open up about her? I mean, how did they come to sort of trust you both, so to speak?
I don't remember exactly how we got in touch with Tina in the first place. I think it might have been through David Niven Jr. So David
Ah,
Niven's
Mm.
son, David Jr., knows Tina Sinatra, and I've never met him in person, but I'd spoken to him when I was doing my Vivian Lee research because his dad was good friends with Vivian Lee.
oh, I see. Okay.
And so I got back in touch with him and I said, "Oh, do you know anyone who knew Ava?" Obviously, David Niven was in the Little Hut with Ava Gardner, so he had
Right.
that connection. And I think it was he that put us in touch with Tina or gave us her email or something like that. And yeah, we just, I think her assistant set it up or something like that. But she was really, willing to chat, and that was so great.
Yeah.
And she was a really lovely person.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. And like you both mentioned, there's already been a number of books written about Ava Gardner. So, did you know beforehand what kind of perspective you were going to be taking this time around, or did you both go through all the books first and then think, okay, there's something missing here. There's another perspective that people have perhaps looked over. I was just curious how that sort of uh, process came to be.
I think because both of us are sort of film scholars, I mean, we both studied film studies. So I think from the beginning we kind of wanted to focus more on on her legacy as an actress rather than on her personal life. And um, one of the best books on her is the Lee Server book, the Love is Nothing, Ava. It's like a big volume, and he really goes into detail about her personal life in that book, and
Right.
you know, sort of chronicles all her relationships and friendships and romances. So I don't think I knew there was no topping that. Like this, he did so much research, you couldn't really do
I
more than
see.
that. So so I think it was a combination of both. We really wanted to sort of do a closer look at her work as an actor because that's something that's been really neglected. But also we knew that it's already been done, so we didn't want to do exactly the same thing as well. So I think it was a combination of both those factors.
Mm-hmm. And when it's interesting because her performances, to me, really are underrated. And I mean, I'm always careful when I say someone who's become such a legend is underrated because to become successful in show business, period, is like climbing 10 or 15 mountains. So, but in that top tier amongst the legends of the time, she appears to me to be underrated. And it's interesting because when I watch her performances, there's a similarity with in the fact that she was so subtle. And when you look at actors like Steve McQueen or Alain Delon, they had that sort of their subtlety was their power, and they seem to get praised often for that. Whereas I feel like this is something people have not noticed, is that she was so natural and she can convey so much by doing so little, like them. I was curious if either of you kind of had any opinions as to why people just really didn't have not really given much notice about her, the power of her performances.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big reasons is because she came up through the Hollywood studio system and she was marketed as a star, and that's how people knew her. And she herself wasn't, you know, confident of her abilities at
Right.
all. She didn't set out to be a great actress. That wasn't her goal.
Right.
even when she started doing more films, she was still like, I'm in it for the money,
Right.
basically. But I think she was a lot better than she gave herself credit for. And I think you can see, if you watch her films from the very early ones, like Ghosts on the Loose and things like that, you can kind of see her upward trajectory
Yes.
of gaining these skills. She was obviously a very beautiful woman. She, worked well with the camera in a physical kind of sense, but in terms of acting ability, it's something that she built upon film by film as she went along. And then I think when she got into the 1950s and 1960s, perhaps when she broke away from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, that kind of gave her a bit more opportunity to shine in a way that she hadn't when she was doing, films for Louis B. Mayer.
Right.
I think of a film like, I think Anthony would say, Night the Iguana is obviously one of her best performances.
Yeah,
And in
definitely.
my opinion, another of hers is BHOWANI Junction,
Yes.
from, I think, 1955, 56.
Yes.
And she's so good in that film. And she's directed by George Cukor, who is known for getting great performances out of his female leads. And I think he and Ava made such a good team in that film. Now, the film itself, I don't think is like her best. I don't think it's the best,
Right.
but her performance is, as you said, so subtle,
Yeah.
so understatedly dramatic.
Mm.
It's a very kind of heavy film. It's not, a musical. It's not a showboat. It's not a not even a noir like The Killers. It's really kind of like, it's topical. It's historically topical. It deals with really kind of heavy things like rape and
Right.
other heavy topics like that. And she does so well in that. And I want more people to watch it and just focus on her, because
Yeah.
all of these elements come together. You've got Cukor directing. You've got George Hoyningen-Huna, who did the color. He was the color specialist, and he was a famous fashion photographer who I think took some of the best pictures of her, hands down,
Oh,
in her
yes.
entire life. And Stuart Granger does well in the film, but Ava, I think she really shines. It's like a tier above like anything she'd done previously, in my opinion. Just
Yeah.
the subtle drama of her performance, and it's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I actually just saw it
Yeah.
3 or 4 days ago for the first time, and yeah, I was blown away by her performance. I mean, just the fury that came from her, and like what, like it, particularly when after she was nearly raped, and the man who she winds up with at the end was trying to get her to say that it was maybe her fault that she was leading that guy on, and just the way she stood up and said, I didn't, and she just screamed at him, and it was so like right from her instinct and gut, and it was so organic. But just the way she was reacting to the horrible atrocities happening around her, and of course that rape scene when she's nearly raped and then kills the guy, and just the look of horror on her face. But it's yeah, I had never seen her do anything like that, because it's such a complicated perform role. I mean, there's like also the complications of being biracial, and how she never felt she's not English. People would say, well, you're not English enough to be English, or you're not Indian enough to be Indian, and so she was kind of caught between both worlds being. And I just thought that was, I mean, to see that back then in particular, I mean, even now I can't think of many films that sort of explore that. I'm sure there are, just nothing comes to mind. But yeah, I was really blown away by her performance. The film has some, I didn't think it was necessarily a great film. I thought it was quite good. I know that it had some issues in the editing, I believe. Like they had to cut some stuff. I think, Anthony, do you remember? I think they had to add, the Cukor was mad about that, right?
Yeah, so was Ava, I think. I think some key scenes that she felt were important for her performance were cut out, which wasn't
Yeah.
unusual, but I think it just added to her already, she had that attitude that they always screw me over whenever even if I
Right.
do good work, it's
Right.
still not going to be recognized. And in a way, she was right. And I think just to add on to what you guys said so eloquently, I just think part of the the whole thing in the 1940s and 50s, this whole sort of star system, particularly when it came to female stars, was they just weren't given, you know, they weren't given credit, but they also weren't given many opportunities to actually develop and to shine. And even if someone like Ava showed, real talent, it was not really recognized. It wasn't the first thing that anyone would think about, oh, we need
Right.
to give her a chance to show off her skills.
Mm-hmm.
It was mostly about how she'd look in a movie. I
Right.
think that's what really mattered. So I think she knew that. I mean, she was an intelligent person, and she knew that's what people wanted from her. And I think first of all, she lacked confidence to be able to sort of stand up for herself. But also, at the time, it just wasn't. It was a different time and a different system. So I think it was really hard for her. And I think once her contract with the MGM finished, and she started doing different projects, you really see the change. I think you really see she starts coming to her own, and she's talent as well. She's doing different projects. And the sad thing is obviously the ageism of the time. So the
Right.
moment she really started to gain confidence, those roles just kind of ran dry. There wasn't that much for her to do. I mean, she did The Night of the Iguana, she did 7 Days in May, which was with Kirk Douglas, which I think is really great as well, even though she's
Yeah,
got a really tiny part, but her
I
scenes
agree.
are very strong.
Yes.
And then after that, there was not that much offered to her. So it's really a shame. I think had she worked throughout the 60s and had she been given like meaty material, she could have really evolved into like someone like, Brando did.
Right.
He had this whole other phase in his career when he was able to showcase his mature talent. Women weren't given that sort of opportunity, I don't
Mm,
think. So it's a
right.
shame.
Yeah. What do you think it was? Do you think it was a mistake that she turned down some big things in the '60s, like The Graduate? I mean, to me, I mean, I love Anne Bancroft and I love that movie,
Sure.
but I mean, I just feel like Ava just would have been perfect in that part, and also like she actually was like in her 40s, whereas Anne Bancroft was like 5 years older than than Dustin Hoffman, and she was meant to be like 20 years older. They did make it work because Dustin looks
Yeah.
so young. So it is convincing, but sometimes I can't help but wonder. I'm like, oh my god, that I think that would have been really
It would have
incredible.
been amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and I know Sweet Bird of Youth, like you both mentioned, she turned down. I mean, do
Yeah.
you think that would have? Do you think if she had said yes to some of those things, maybe the future would have been a little, you know, richer artistic wise? I guess it's hard to say.
Probably. I mean, I would love to see her. I mean, I love both those actresses in those parts. I think Geraldine Page is one of the
Yeah.
all-time greats.
Yes. Yes.
So I mean, it's always strange to speculate, but I mean, yeah, Ava wasn't her own sort of best friend when it came to her career. I mean, she could have done more things and she could have made better choices. But as Kendra already mentioned, she kind of never really had the confidence and she never really cared that much, I don't think. Even though, I mean, she was very complicated. And even now, the more I learn about her after we've written the book, I continue to be sort of because she wasn't very straightforward. On one hand, she didn't care, but on the other hand, there's also evidence to suggest that she did care very deeply and she wanted to be recognized. So I think
Right.
she wasn't a very simple person, she was quite complex.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are some
Mm.
favorites of yours, Anthony? I know Night of the Iguana is a big one for you. Is that right?
Yes, I love that film. I mean, not only one of my favorite Ava movies, but it's one of my all-time favorite movies. I don't know, there's something about it, the atmosphere, the way it's
Yeah.
filmed, the way it's directed, and the Tennessee Williams play, which is interesting because I saw the play itself on stage in London a few years ago, and I didn't actually like the play. So it is the movie. It's because they've changed it slightly, they've updated it, they've changed the characters around, and it really works. And the cast is flawless. I mean,
Yeah. I
everyone in the
agree.
cast is great. And
Yeah.
then Houston's direction and Ava is particularly good in this film. So I love that film. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, I mean, it's interesting because she's done so many different kind of genres from the beginning. She did, you know, film noir, and she did musicals in the 50s, and she did some sort of melodramas and adventure films, and you know, and then later she even did like disaster films and horror. So she really had so many. She's, she's left her mark on so many different genres, I think, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, I love The Killers. I think that's a really great
Yes.
film.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah,
And
that's a
the Barefoot Contessa, I used to think it was kind of, you know, very talky and kind of boring, but now I really appreciate it. I mean, if you listen to the words and the way it's been written by Mankiewicz, I think
yeah.
it's a masterpiece, even though it's kind of it's not as good as All About Eve, but I think in its own right, it's a brilliant film.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was quite good. I felt some things about it I felt were a little sort of emotionally dry, but I should revisit it because it has stayed with me. But I know Pandora is another one, and The Flying Dutchman. I believe Anthony, you mentioned that
Mm.
was a favorite. See, that was another one where just she's so it's so subtle, like the interaction between her and James Mason, uh, particularly towards the end where they're professing their love for one another, and it's so tender and again just overlooked because it's like it's one thing to be like so beautiful, but it's also just what she
Yeah.
effortlessly could do with the part. So I thought that was she was really good in that one as well. Do you have any different ones, Kendra? Because I know BHOWANI Junction was a favorite of yours, but is there any others that stick out to you?
Yeah, actually, I really liked One Touch of Venus.
Oh, I still have to see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just fun. It's
Yes.
lighthearted. It's nice to see her in kind of a comedy, a lighter comedy. Yeah, it's good fun to watch. So it's a
Hmm.
complete contrast from Hawani Junction and Night of the Iguana, her really meaty roles, but
Yeah.
I
Yes,
enjoy it.
yes. I still have to see that because I heard that was quite good. I just watched Mogambo yesterday, and it was
Mm.
I hadn't seen it before, and I know that was the only film she got an Academy Award nomination for. And it's interesting because to me it had a similarity with The Night of the Iguana in terms of this love triangle. The leading man loves the he's not really actually torn between the two. It was like he didn't love Ava and he loved Grace Kelly. It was more complex in Night of the Iguana, which I thought Night of the Iguana was much better. But I thought, well, it's interesting because there was a similarity there. But I love her spunk in that film and just the humor, the sense of humor and the energy she had, and again, just those subtle moments of how much she was conveying with her behavior and how hurt she was by Gable. But the only thing I felt was that because she was meant to be a New Yorker in that film, I wonder if an accent would have helped with that, because she sounds very. I know that was encouraged at the time, like the standardized American accent that they trained her to get rid of her Southern accent. But when you see Night of the Iguana, I thought the fact that she just allowed her accent out, and that's what Huston wanted and Tennessee Williams, added so much to that character. And I couldn't help but wonder if that would have just had such a much better contrast with Grace Kelly being so upper class and everything and British sounding. I don't know if either of you had any opinions about her performance there.
I don't know. I mean, Red Dust is one of my all-time favorite films,
Yes, which is
which
the original, right?
Mogambo was remade from. I think Jean Harlow and Clark Gable are amazing in that
Yes.
film. But I think if you compare Ava's performance to Jean Harlow's, they're quite similar. So like Jean Harlow had a kind of a mid-Atlantic accent as well, but the way they kind of deliver lines is quite similar. So yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I think Ava's great in Magambo.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah. What did you think,
It's
Anthony?
such a
Go ahead. Sorry.
it's such a quintessentially MGM film that I don't think they would have really allowed her to play with that. I mean,
Right. That's what I
as much
figured.
as there is this kind of I mean, it also is the 50s, so like it's so much more subdued than Red Dust, and so
Yes,
it's
yes,
kind of glossed over. And I think actually Ava is the only element of the movie which is a bit more risque. Everything else is kind of
I agree.
almost boring. I mean, if Ava wasn't in the movie, it would be really boring. And also, Gable is in his what, 50s by this
Yeah,
point, I want to say.
yes, yes,
So it's
yeah.
kind of, I don't
Women
know,
half
it's
his age
kind of
lusting after
comical.
him.
Like, yeah, like those two most beautiful women in Hollywood are like losing their,
Yes, losing their mind over
panties
him.
over Clark Gable. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
watching it because I think Ava is really entertaining and she's got great comic timing. Again, as Kendra mentioned in One Touch of Venus, it's already apparent, but by the
yes,
time she did
yeah,
Mogambo, she was really so good at comedy. I think she's really working
yeah. I agree.
so
Yeah,
well
just
in that film.
yes, I agree. I thought her energy and that spunk and just like their passive aggressiveness with later with those scenes with Grace Kelly and Gable with the three of them. Yeah, it was, I liked it, but again, it certainly is much too simplistic and sanitized. I felt that was another thing I thought. She's been in a number of good movies, and to me, like a couple or three or four, that are perhaps great or considered masterpieces. But I wonder if perhaps that's why people don't discuss her creatively enough, because maybe the films are not that many of the films. It's not like she's Katharine Hepburn, where we have so many to talk about, or Crawford or
Yeah.
Davis. I don't know. Did either of you think that also had anything to do with why she's less discussed, creatively speaking? I don't know, Kendra, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's possible. Yeah, you're right. We don't really talk about she never really had one particular film that kind of stood the test of time in a way like, Judy Garland had like The Wizard of Oz, or Vivien Leigh
Yes,
had Gone
yes,
with the Wind, or Betty Davis had All About Eve, and
right, right,
something like that. So that I just think her really top tier films, amazing as they are, yeah, aren't quite as well known today as some of her contemporaries are. And I suppose with Betty Davis and people like that, there's been quite a lot written about her discussing her films and not just her personal life. Whereas, people who wrote about Ava, even in the press at the time, really focused on her persona off screen and not so much the great work she was doing on screen. Like, she wasn't really regarded by critics as a great film performer.
right,
As you
right,
said, she was nominated for one Academy Award,
right.
as opposed to Katharine Hepburn, who was nominated for like 10, So,
Yes.
yeah, it's probably a combination of things, but it's
Mm-hmm.
a shame because some of her films really do, they still hold up really well when you watch them. They're just perhaps not as well known as some
Yes.
of the ones that you'd see on like the AFI 100 best films list or something like that.
Right.
Mm.
Right. I also wanted to touch a little bit about Snows of Kilimanjaro. And of course who Hemingway, she became good friends with Hemingway, was based on his book. Outside of the fact that I didn't know. I mean, I knew that she had had a couple of abortions. I didn't with the through when she was with Sinatra. I didn't realize that it was while she was doing this film, which is what happened. She doesn't have an abortion in the film, of course, but she becomes pregnant and is afraid to tell um Gregory Peck, because she knows that he does not want a child right now. But outside of the fact that that was literally a very similar experience that she was having in real life. I didn't think. I thought the film. I thought they had some great moments. I thought the film overall fell flat. I mean, you could feel that it was like a great short story, clearly a great short story. And I just felt that doing it as a film didn't quite work. But just again, the scenes with her and Peck, because sometimes I know some. I mean, I know some Gregory Peck movies. I don't know his filmography that well, but I know some people I have heard say that they have felt he wasn't the best in romantic leads. But I felt with the two of them together, acting is reacting, and he was quite suave with her and charming. And I thought, wow, I've never actually seen. I mean, when you're reacting off of her, how could you not be? But I've never really seen that side of him come out so strong. But just the way, like the sorrow and the helplessness, and she was so tortured. Again, with the utmost subtlety. It's not like she's, being very dramatic or bawling her eyes out. Like, it was just like she's holding the sorrow, and she knows that she can't tell him, like people do in life. And just that alienation, I mean, it really was strong. Is that one for you, Anthony, that sticks out, that her performance there?
Well, it's interesting because for that film, I love her scenes, but I really don't like the movie as a myself many times, like with a
Yes.
DVD, just like fast forwarding to her scenes and like not bothering with the rest of it.
Yes,
Because I think the scenes that they share together are really nice. Like, the
I
first scene where
agree.
they first meet in the cafe, it's beautifully filmed, and
Yes.
it's very romantic. And it's interesting because later in his life, Gregory Peck was asked, I think it was Parkinson, or one of the British interviewers on TV asked him who his favorite leading lady had been throughout his career, and he said he singled Ava out. And obviously he had worked with everyone from, Audrey Hepburn and name them. So that's quite a big compliment, I think. And then they really did work well, and they did 3 movies together, and
Yes.
they were great friends outside of, you know, work as well.
Hmm.
So it's always a joy to watch them together. Even though I'm not a huge Gregory Peck fan, I have to say. I think for me he's quite wooden and quite, I don't know,
Right.
he's not my favorite, but I think with Ava, because she is so natural and so warm, I think the combination kind of works. The two of them
Yes.
together, it works, yeah. But that's
Right.
not one of my favorite films, even though I think
Yeah, me
she's very
neither.
good in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. What did you think of that one, Kendra?
You know what? I have to say that the copy that I saw was so poor
Right.
that I
Yeah, it
couldn't
has
really
not
see
been
the
restored.
picture.
If it's
Couldn't see
been
the
restored,
picture.
I don't know, but
No, it
yeah.
hasn't.
Yeah, I didn't think
But
so.
I will say, I mean, I used to like Ernest Hemingway quite a lot. Like when I was in high school, I read a lot of his books and everything. But yeah, that film didn't stand out to me. I think The Sun Also Rises is a lot better. But I think Ava and Gregory Peck have such good chemistry, not only in that film, but in The Great Sinner and then On the Beach later as well. Like they just sizzle together. And sometimes,
Yes.
like, even when one performer is a bit, kind of carries the action or carries the whole scene, it just
Hmm.
works.
Yes.
Mm.
They just they look so good together.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
More Ava and Greg, but yeah,
Yes.
that it's not my favorite film, but
Yeah.
it's I like them.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
I
On
mean,
the Beach is better, actually. Sorry, just to
no, no, go ahead. Go
out of
ahead.
Yeah.
out of the 3 movies they did together, I think On the Beach is very interesting
I still have
set
to
of
see
movies,
that.
and
I haven't seen that yet.
it's very timely, especially now, I think, to rewatch it, and like it's kind of hauntingly, topical still after
Right.
60 years. And
Hmm.
again, it has moments of being a bit sort of slow and boring, but um and it's interesting whenever I think about it, actually, it's whenever Ava is not on screen in many of her films, you're just kind of like checking out. But then when she comes back, it's like you can't sort of be bored when Ava's on screen. And I think that's such a
Mm.
testament to her power as a performer. You cannot take your eyes off her no matter what's going on the
Right.
screen. And I think it's very much the case in On the Beach, because there are sort of moments in the movie, maybe 15 minutes at most, where she's not in, and you're kind of really losing interest. Comes
Mm.
back, and you're like, okay, I'm back. So, yeah, that's Ava, I think.
Well, it's interesting because one thing I've noticed about her, like just like 7 Days in May, for example, is that she really takes her time on when she's in front of the camera, and she's really, she's breathing. She lets her lines really land on the other person. And as an actor myself, I remember when I first started, I would often go fast and it's very common. And I teach now as well, and often it's because people are anxious, and so they may be doing well, but part of them is like they want to get rid of the anxiety, so they want to get to the end of the scene. And I just thought, wow, when you watch her, you know, she's really taking her time, and she's not afraid to just do, you know, just do nothing, you know, and that's a great lesson in not just screen acting, but acting in general, is just like she is breathing, like she's there, she's present. And again, it's
Yeah.
strong. I mean, you really hear what she's saying as a result of that as well. So yeah, she's really something else. I had another question that's sort of a bit of a funny question, but when I always wonder when people write biographies, or not that this is necessarily a biography, but when you write books about, you know, people who have passed away, did she ever appear in either of your dreams when you when you were writing this? Give you any tips?
Not that I can remember.
Okay.
Sorry.
What about you, Anthony? What do any
I
visits
do
from
remember
Ava?
having an Ava dream. I did have an Ava dream that I do remember, but it was before we started working on the book. It was when I was living in Rome. I was studying in Rome for a year. And I remember vividly having this dream of like Ava giving like a big party on like a rooftop and like asking me to come and like inviting me to come. And I was like, it was a really nice dream, but that's the one I remember, but not during the writing of the book.
Maybe she was thinking, "Oh God, here's another two writing a book about me."
Yeah, probably. But fortunately, we didn't have to deal with her,
Right,
temper.
right, right. How was going to the Ava Gardner museum? I know you went when you were traveling in the States. How was that for you, Anthony?
Oh, well, it was interesting because Kendra just sort of touched upon it very diplomatically. But, we had some problems with them during the writing of the
Oh,
book. Um, but fortunately now the museum and the whole estate is in completely different hands. So
okay.
it was really nice to go now, and be welcomed really warmly. And our book is actually there now, in the museum shop. And
Mm,
so it was really lovely. And, to see the place where Ava came from was really moving. I mean, you can really see that she was sort of um formed there. Like going there really helps you understand why she was the way she was, and even her acting, there's something about that land and about that place which is very sort of particular, and the people as well. There's a very different quality to the sort of
right.
people who live in North Carolina, I think. So it was, yeah, I was really happy to visit. It was amazing.
Yeah, I know the you met one of the board members, Laura Stalker, because I've had her on my show a couple of times, and their passion for Ava is really really remarkable. Have you been there, Kendra? Have you ever gone to that museum?
Unfortunately not. No, I've never been, but from Anthony's experience, I think I'd like to one day.
Yes, no, I think I'd like to go. It looks like quite the place to see all that memorabilia and everything, and just where she's from. Thank you both so much for taking the time to do this. I really really enjoy talking to you, and again, I highly recommend getting this fantastic. Sorry that it's blurry. That's just unfortunately with Zoom for some reason. It's a remarkable book with some unforgettable many photographs of Ava, and of course also a really nice dense text. So I highly recommend Ava fans or classic Hollywood fans out there to pick up this book. So Kendra, where, if people want to follow you on social media, or what you're up to, I know you have a website as well. Where's the best place for people to go?
I mean, I'm on Twitter. I'm on pretty much everything. Twitter, Facebook, which I don't use as much. I don't use Twitter as much anymore either. I'm usually on Instagram.
Okay.
So you can follow me at Kendra J Bean. And then I have the Viv and Larry Graham as well, which is where I post about Vivian Lee and Laurence Olivier, and vivandlarry.com. as well. Yeah, so I'm around.
Great, fantastic. And is there anything are you working on anything now? Any books now at the moment, Kendra?
I'm not working on a book at the moment per se. What I am doing in my personal time, what little time I have, working full time and raising a toddler.
Right, of course.
I am cataloging my Vivian Lee collection. So the goal is to have that online eventually as like a searchable database for researchers. So it's cataloging the photos and the playbills and the magazines and everything like that.
Oh, great.
But professionally, I work for National Museums Liverpool and I'm the photography curator there. So I'm, just always doing stuff, museum kind of stuff at the moment.
Okay, great. Fantastic. And Anthony, I know you're mostly an Instagram person, social media wise, I believe. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, that's the only social media I use, and it's already too much, but that's what I use. And there's also a dedicated actually Instagram for the book, the Ava A Life in Movies. So you can, if someone wants to, there's like photos of Ava things.
Oh, yes. Yes, I think I saw that
as well. Yeah. And we don't really update it very often, but there's a lot of stuff that we actually did post when we were working on the book. So if people are interested, you can go back and look at those things, our process, and
it's Ava Gardner book, that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I think if you type in Ava Life in Movies, it will probably come up as well. I think that's like the I don't know. Yeah.
I'll find it. I'll put it in the description box for people who want to follow the page, but follow both of you as well. And Anthony, I know your book, Friends of Dorothy, is out. I just wish this wasn't blurry. There, I almost had it. There we go. Kinda. This is it the 9th of October that it comes out, I believe, Anthony?
I think so, yeah, or the 10th or the 10th of October, I think, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, like I said, I'm about halfway through it and I'm loving it. It's so good. So get Anthony's new book. And you're working on like 2 other books now, right, Anthony? One on the Misfits, the making of the Misfits, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. So first is Lauren Bacall. I'm doing a sort of biography / study of her film work as well. And then Marilyn and the Misfits is after that. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Well, I know, Anthony, you're gonna be back in the next month on my show to talk about Friends of Dorothy. So I'm looking forward to having you back. And Kendra, I'd love to have you back because I want to read your Vivian Lee book because I know some of her movies, but she's someone I haven't properly dived into. So I hope I can have you back down the road to talk about that one day.
Absolutely. I think you're in for a treat because she was so interesting. So buckle up.
I can't wait.
We love. Yeah.
I can't wait.
And Kendra's book is really, really beautiful, the Vivian book. So
good to hear.
Recommend that. Yeah.
Great. Good to hear. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Well, thank you both again and look forward to talking to you both again down the road.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/RobertBellissimo@the-movies for full details. You can also leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel by pressing the thanks link, which you will find right below the video frame. Just press the thanks link, and from there, you can leave a donation if you choose to. And lastly, if this is your first time here on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. Just press the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Also, comment below if you've read this book by Kendra Bean and Anthony Uzarowski on Ava Gardner. If you've read it, comment below. Let me know what you think of it. Or if you watch this interview and go away and read the book, come back, comment, let me know what you think. Also, click the like button, and thank you so much again for watching. I will see you all in the next episode.